Sweet. All right, so I'm here with Natalie. Natalie, ¿cuál es tu apellido?
Moreno.
Moreno. Okay, Natalie. ¿Por qué no empiezas con qué es lo que estás haciendo ahorita o qué es lo que haces?
En inglés, español.
Let's do it in English.
All right.
Yeah.
So I am currently in production of my thesis film
Okay.
for my MFA in film at the University of Central Arkansas.
Okay. Go Bears.
Yes,
Yeah.
go Bears. Shout out to the Bears.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is my film. It's called Strawberry.
Okay.
It's about this immigrant girl that has moved to the U.S. with her mother
Okay.
to live with her mom's family, her sister, and her husband and kids. And this girl, her name's Marta. She's 17. She came to the U.S. when she was 13 years old. So she's kind of still like adjusting to the culture, basically.
Definitely. I feel like it's something that's super common for Latinos. Todos somos inmigrantes. So I guess that as soon as you get to the U.S., there's always a culture shock.
Yeah.
On all parts. What inspired you to? Is this based on somebody, or is this just like something that has an emotional connection to yourself? Or?
Yeah, well, I guess a little bit of both in a way, right?
Okay.
It's not my personal story. It's like nobody's really own story. But when I got here, I came as an international student
Okay.
To UCA as an undergraduate in 2015.
Okay.
So, along my way, throughout the years, I've made a lot of friendships. A lot of them were Hispanic, second generation immigrants here. And they were just kind of telling me about, their experience here and how growing up here was kind of difficult to balance their identity as, Hispanic, as an American.
Exactly.
And I just kind of drew from that, those stories that they would tell me. And then I had to make my thesis project. I always like adding a little bit of, myself.
Yeah, for sure.
And my experiences with the world. So I was like, why not make a story about, this based here in Arkansas?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, kind of me, as far as like myself growing up, I guess I was one of those first generation kids. So growing up it was difficult because I didn't find a sense of belonging. Back in the day, I was like probably the only Mexican kid going to school, growing up. And nowadays I see like, you go to a high school and there's like just so many more Hispanics. And sometimes I become a little envious of that. I'm like, I wish I had that.
Like that experience. Yeah.
So you came here when you were 15, right?
I came here in 2015.
2015. Okay.
I was, I guess, 18 at the time. Yeah.
So was there like any other place to go, or you wanted to come to Arkansas, or what kind of drove you here? I'm curious to.
Yeah. So back in Honduras, I went to bilingual school, and the goal of the school was to like send a majority of their students to study abroad. Yeah. More specifically in the U.S. So they had like a list of different schools that people from my high school had gone to before, and UCA was one of them.
Yeah.
I applied to like many schools everywhere, but this was like really the less expensive option. And they also gave me a scholarship. So I just kind of landed here. Yeah. Initially, I was going to do like mass communications. But then I took like a film appreciation class and I just kind of
appreciated film.
I just appreciated way beyond. And I was like, I want to make it.
That's totally awesome. So I've been following kind of what you guys have been doing on social media, and one of the things that I noticed is you guys are doing something like with the quinceañera on the film.
Yes.
Are you able to talk a little bit about that, or is that a surprise?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So
we have it like on our like log line. In there. So like the girl that comes to the U.S., she has a cousin that's 3 years younger than her. Yeah. And the story takes place on the day of her cousin's quinceañera. Okay. In Marta, the main character, it's kind of like this liaison between, her cousin, which is like the younger generation, and her like elders, which her mom, and her like aunt, like the, I guess, older generation. Just kind of like helping bridge this generational gap, helping her cousin Adela. Her name is Adela.
Yeah.
And her struggles with like her identity and like this tradition that is like very Latin American.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah.
So did you ever have a quinceañera?
I actually didn't have one.
Did you ever want one or?
Well, here's the thing.
Yeah.
Like of course, like in Honduras, like everybody always has one. And when I was turning 15 that year, like literally my friends, every weekend there was like another quinceañera.
Yeah.
So I was involved with like 2 of them. Like I was in like the quinceañera party. I don't know if that's how you call it.
I guess like part of like
El
the damas and
cortejo.
chambelanas.
Sí, sí.
Okay.
So I kind of felt like that was, like an experience that I had. But instead of having a party, I just wanted to travel.
Yeah.
So I went to Europe with my grandparents and my mom.
That sounds like a better option.
Yeah.
I feel like everybody's always presented that option, as like, because as a photographer, like I primarily shoot a lot of quinceañeras.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's literally what I do like every weekend.
Yeah.
And they were like, a lot of them that I talked to afterwards, they were like, dang, I should have took a trip. But some of them really do enjoy it,
Yeah.
It's definitely something that, some people take a lot of pride in it because it is very Latin American. And I think it's a lot more common I know it's super common in Mexico, not as much in South America, but now you're telling me that in Honduras it's super popular. Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody, like all my friends, like I'm telling you, like literally every weekend, my parents were like, you can't go to all of them. Like you need to choose which one you want to go to. And I was like, well, I think I'll just go to all.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you went to like a bilingual school in Honduras.
Yes.
So you learned English in Honduras and you came here. That's pretty awesome because, by talking to you, you don't sound like, no tienes acento. You sound like you're from somebody from here. How was that process of like learning English? Was it difficult for you or was it something that you just wanted to do and it just happened or?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of like bilingual schools, I think, in like Central America. It's like just, I guess, a popular thing.
Yeah. Oh, I think, like Latin America, like everybody, I guess, wants to know English because I guess they always want, to come to a country that, speaks English. So I feel like it's a necessity sometimes.
For sure.
Yeah.
So since I was 3 years old in like nursery, like my process of learning English started. So I've kind of been like, learning English and Spanish kind of like at the same time. But, I also have siblings like my older sister and I have a younger brother. But their accent is like thicker than mine. So I don't know. I guess maybe it just depends on the person. I really don't know.
I mean, I don't know. I was born here and a lot of people always mention my accent. They say sometimes it's country. I don't know. I don't hear myself, but
interesting.
I guess one of the things I notice it a lot is when I drink.
Yeah.
The more I drink, the countryer my accent gets. So it's just something I've never really had the struggle of not knowing English. So it's always intriguing to me to find people that have had to go through the process of learning another language like English to be able to make it in a country like this. But going back to your film, is this your first film or have you done it in the past?
This is my third film.
Third film?
Right? Yeah, you would say that. Like directing and writing, it's my third one, yes.
Okay. How was that first film? Like, do you feel like there has been a lot of progress since that first film to where you're at now?
For sure, yes.
What was like one of the hardest things that you struggled with in the beginning?
So my first, I guess, film that I like directed was this story about this little Hispanic kid in the U.S. He is 8-9 years old and he goes to school like a regular kid and his teacher assigns him a journal to write like what they do at home. And then when the teacher is reading the assignment, she finds out that this kid, he lives in a brothel.
Okay.
So of course that's, when you hear this story, it's definitely not a story that you think, a brothel and like all this stuff require a lot, right? So it was like difficult, finding a school, finding casting was probably the most difficult thing. Finding a kid that
who's willing to
whose parents exactly like are willing to like let him do this. But we did it, you know. It was like super low budget.
Yeah.
I was a very not very experienced at directing.
Yeah.
So there were like a lot of things that, you know, probably could have been better.
Yeah.
But I'm still, you know, I'm still proud of it. And now like doing this one, you know, I have that experience, and I did another one also last year. But this is definitely the biggest script that I've done, you know, like in a lot of, there's a scene where there's like 5 characters in the same scene, and just, you know, directing every performance individually was very like difficult, but also like a challenge that makes you grow, I think, as a creator, as a director.
For sure.
So there's definitely been a lot of growth in the past.
Is there any particular movie or like director that you take inspiration on? If so, who's that?
I feel like there's a lot.
Yeah.
I would say like Lucrecia Martel is definitely one of them. She's an Argentine filmmaker. Also Greta Gerwig. She did Lady Bird and Little Women. But I also like Alfonso Cuarón, you know, with like his movie Roma was something that I really looked at when I was doing this. I feel like those are the ones I can think of right now. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah. So your films, I feel like there are. I haven't seen the first 2 or this one, but judging on what you're telling me, they kind of are a little bit heartwarming towards the end. You know, like obviously, you know, you have your main characters that go through, you know, these struggles, and at the end, you know, I'm assuming that they get rewarded or there's some kind of good outcome. Tell us a little about your second film. What's that about?
Well, my second film was kind of this little project I came up with for school, since, you know, last year was my second year of my MFA. So the project, the film is about, it's kind of like a modern retelling of the myth of Persephone and Demeter, the Greek goddesses. And it's like this, you know, young Demeter, kind of like dealing with like the loss of her child. And through this multiple phone calls of, you know, concerned friends, like even parents. And while these phone calls are happening, she's kind of trying to make this ritual, acquire like all these materials to make a ritual to bring her daughter back from the underworld. So it's very, I guess it's very like poetic and ethereal. There's not a lot of dialogue. There's mainly only like one character in the screen. We were also filming a little bit during COVID, so the minimal crew, minimal cast was also something that we were looking into when I was making this. But yeah.
That's pretty cool. So after this film, what do you think's next for you? Obviously, I think you're almost going to graduate right after this film, or
yes.
Yeah. So what's next for you?
So I'm graduating in May, and then, you know, as an international student, I'm probably going to apply for this thing called OPT. It's optional practical training. It's kind of like a work visa for a year, basically. Okay. And then just look for jobs in the media. Yeah. In the, you know, the same platform, like filmmaking, I guess visual storytelling, the media, probably, you know, starting here in Arkansas. Yeah. And then the film, you know, we're planning to submit it to multiple festivals, like Hispanic film festivals, Latino film festivals in the US, but also in Latin America.
Okay. So, that's pretty awesome. Earlier you mentioned that you originally wanted, or your degree was mass communications, right? What made you want to do that? Was that like something that you like news reporting, or?
Yeah, I guess I just always liked journalism, and just, you know, the telling of stories. I was a fan of like documentary and journalism, just because I like telling stories that are real, stories that are truth, that make us like connect, right? But then I realized, you know, that you know, even though the film also has to do with like mass communications, that I wanted to lean more into
like the creative side of things.
Yeah.
how do you? It's always intriguing to me, how somebody comes up with like scripts or like writing and everything. Because for me, some people say I have really good writing skills, but in reality, it takes a long time for me. Does it take a long time for you, or do you have like a certain process, or what is your? Talk to us a little bit about
like the writing process. Yeah. Oh my god, I don't even know if I even like have a writing process.
Where do you draw inspiration from, or is it just kind of you gather all your ideas and kind of just see what works better?
I guess like maybe not every day, but like when an idea for a script or a story inspires me, I just write it on my phone.
Okay.
Then I have like a list of like stories that I can kind of look back into. But I also draw inspiration from like true stories. Like I was telling you about my friends.
Yeah.
And then, my first film, the one about the little kid in the brothel, is actually based on a story that my grandma told me. Okay. She was a teacher when she was younger, a first grade teacher. And one of her kids was just like sleeping in her class all the time. And then she was like, hey, what's wrong? And the little kid, in his innocence just told her that. And I was like, oh, what if I like take this story I just wanted to explore what this kid was feeling and how, so I guess, drawing stuff from like real things that are happening, but still adding a little bit of like my own
creative writing and stuff going into it. Yeah, I feel like kind of like looking at films made in Latin America, they always have a lot more I don't want to use the word gruesome, but just more hard to see scenes. Yeah. Kind of like you were mentioning the kid, him living in a brothel here in America. I mean, you probably see it, but you don't see it like as portrayed like in the movies and all of that. When, living in Latin America, it's just another day. It happens a lot. What would you say is like the big difference between like living in Honduras and living here? Is there like any like culture shock for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, like I think there was a time period where I didn't go back to Honduras for like almost a year. And then when I got back, it was a reverse cultural shock for me. I was like, and it was during the pandemic as well that I went back because my sister got married. And it was just, you saw like all the effects that the pandemic had. And then before all that, you see a lot of, I guess the other like situations that are happening in the country, right? Like, I don't want to talk bad about my own country, but there's a lot of like political corruption and violence and
it's everywhere in Mexico, Central America, even South America.
Oh yeah.
And I served in the Marine Corps.
Oh really? Wow.
During my early days, and my first deployment was actually El Salvador.
Oh really?
And a lot of people don't know that, but I was like, there's a lot of things that the U.S. is doing over there, trying to fix a lot of things because those countries, there's a lot of corruption.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very different. I feel like here in the U.S. we have a lot of commodities that we don't have in Mexico. To where like whenever I go visit Mexico, I can live there for a week or two, but then after that, I'm like, I want to go back to America. I want my AC. I want my car back. All these things. So, given, how did you said you applied to come to the U.S., right? Yeah. Was that a hard process or was that a pretty easy process?
I mean, I guess, I'm a privileged person from Latin America that had, the monetary means to do that. Yeah. Exactly. There's not a lot of people that can say that.
Yeah.
I, grew up coming to the U.S. with a tourist visa. So, I traveled a lot here. I have family in Texas and I have family in Miami. Okay. So we would like visit them when I was little. So it was still, intimidating to apply for a student visa.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of paperwork, you have to go through an interview process. You have to pay all these fees.
So you came here alone just by yourself, right? No family?
Well, yeah, I guess I came with one of my friends that came also from the same school. So I was lucky to have someone with me.
Yeah.
And our moms came with us to drop us off. But I mean, they left after that. So it was still, you know, a hard process. Still a little intimidating, you know, when you, I don't know, if you go to the U.S. embassy in one of these countries and everyone's just very like straight faced, very uptight, very unfriendly, unwelcoming. Yeah, basically.
No, yeah, I know.
So it's very intimidating. You know, and that was the first time that I had to go through like the whole interview process by myself, and it was, you know, very. Like I was very anxious going through it all, right? Because I was by myself and I had to go through all these interviews. Like, what are you going to be doing in the U.S. and all these things. So, you know, it was hard. But luckily I was approved to come here with my student visa. So, yeah.
That's pretty awesome. So I know, like, for a fact that producing a movie or just kind of doing anything creative requires a lot of funds. Has that been a big challenge to make your films happen, or?
Yeah, for sure. I, you know, as an international student, it's like you can't really have a job outside of the school that you're at. It requires like special permission. Yeah. So I can't work at Target, for example, or at the dollar store, or at the ice cream shop, right? To like save money or anything. And then the money that I have, you know, I use toward my schooling. Exactly. So being a student and trying to make a film, you know, you go through GoFundMe or like Indiegogo. In this case, we use Seed and Spark. And our budget, you know, our goal was like $10,000. And we were able to collect around 6,000, 7,000. Like 6,000. And then the rest was like donations that we got. So that was difficult. But I'd say, you know, the most difficult part of making a movie about Hispanics in Arkansas, other than the money, right, it was casting.
Casting. Yeah, that was actually my next question. Like, what was your casting process? Like, how did you find the people that you needed for this?
Yeah, it was very hard. You know, initially I wanted at least, you know, our main character and her mom to have the Central American accent, right? Speak in vos instead of tú. Yeah. Like, you know, in Honduras and El Salvador, that's kind of how we talk. But in Guatemala and Nicaragua, I think it's tú. So, you know, initially that's what I wanted, and I got our main character. She's actually from El Salvador. Okay. So we got her. But her mom was probably the hardest to cast, you know, and then I was like, you know, let's throw away this idea of like the accent. I just need a Hispanic person to be in it. And we ended up, you know, casting like 2 weeks, I think, before, right? Yeah, 2 weeks before we filmed. Yeah. So that was, you know, we also put, we used Backstage. We posted our casting call there. We posted our casting call on our social media. We tried emailing like organizations here. We have our other producer. He lives in Northwest Arkansas. Okay. And he would go to like, you know, Hispanic businesses to be like, hey, is anybody interested in acting? And we ended up getting a lot of teenage girls who wanted to be the quinceañera girl. Yeah. Which, you know, that was great because we got a lot to choose from there. Yeah. But the roles that were, I guess, older, middle-aged people were a little harder to acquire.
Oh yeah, I know your pain. Usually I like whenever I have to do like a paid shoot for like a company or something, I usually put like, need a model for this day. And you know, the younger models is really easy to find. But then, you know, when I need somebody like middle-aged, you know, that's a process. Like I have to go dig in, trying to find the right person that can fit the look, or in this case, you know, fit the character that you're trying to portray. So you did eventually find her, right?
Yeah, we did. She is Puerto Rican, but it worked anyway.
It works. Do you think if you wouldn't have found the correct person, would this film have worked, or?
Probably. Yeah. I don't know. That's a difficult question.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't help but think of like scenarios where it wouldn't have worked, right? Like we're still not done with the movie. Yeah. We're still in the editing process, but we filmed the majority of it. Okay. But I think, you know, it all the parts need to just fall into place for a movie to like really work.
Yeah.
If we would have casted like, you know, a person from a different ethnicity, it probably wouldn't have been the same story, but you know, we could have tried to make it work in a different way.
Yeah. How many days did you guys spend shooting?
Let's see, we had 4 days, and we still have like one small little scene that we need to film. Okay, so.
And editing, who does the editing? Is that you guys or?
Well, we have an editor.
Yeah. Okay. But
yes.
Easier.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. We were lucky enough to find, you know, one of my friends that went to undergrad with me, and my producer. He's a great editor. He works in like, you know, media stuff here in Little Rock.
So, as a director, are you like very familiar with like the functionalities of cameras, or just like strictly like story writing and everything? Yeah.
I guess a little bit, you know, when you were in school, there's electives that you can choose. UCA, we had like the opportunity to, you know, not only focus on what you want, but you can learn from other things. So I took a cinematography class, for example, and I was able to learn how to properly use the camera, expose things. I also am, you know, like a hobby photographer on the side sometimes. But, you know, the cameras we use are like a little more advanced. They're just like you know, they're film cameras, not really photography cameras. But, you know, essentially the basic stuff is always the same, right? So.
Sure. So you do photography like as a hobby. Is there certain things that you like to do in particular? Like just shoot photos of your friends, landscapes?
I don't know. I guess a little bit of everything. Yeah. And then especially like when I travel, I think is where I just like documenting wherever I go. Like if I go to like a festival, for example, you know, if someone's over there playing the drums, or like like little kids with like bubbles, or sometimes there's buildings. It depends. I feel like, but I also take a lot of like graduation pictures for like my friends, or like just people that I know, sort of portraits.
For sure.
So I guess it depends on like where I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know what a day of you as a director is like. Are you like chilled, laid back? Are you like firm? Are you what's your personality like?
Like when we're on set?
Yeah, when you're on set.
Oh my God.
I feel like when people are on set, like their mood changes completely, or at least like mine.
Yeah.
You know, I turned that switch on and people are like, well, this guy's a little intense. Even for like you know, people that work with me, like Santiago, he's totally different guy on set, you know, like so what's your personality like?
Well, I'm already an anxious person, you know. I don't know. Like I try to be calm. I try to, you know, do as much as I can. Try to understand that, you know, like people are doing their own work. I don't need to like micromanage.
Yeah.
Everything. I don't know. I guess I don't know how to, like, I haven't seen myself.
You gotta ask
like
the producer then.
Yeah, I guess I would need to ask my producer.
Yeah, we'll ask him that question. So aside from directing, you said you produced some stuff?
Yes.
Yeah? How was it? Like, I don't really know what a producer does, so do you mind telling me a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So a producer is basically like the manager, essentially, of like the whole thing, right? You deal with organizing everything beforehand and a little bit after, just for like things to fall into place, right? So like you need to location scout, find crew, help find casting, especially with like smaller productions. You know, you kind of have to get your hands on everything as a producer. Then, you know, organize the meals, organize what time, you know, like a schedule when we're getting to this location, deal with like scheduling conflicts with like other people. And then when you're on set, you kind of work like as a production manager to help, I guess, seize the fires that are like, you know, the metaphorical fires that might happen, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So it's basically just like managing the whole thing.
Making sure everything just
the
runs
logistics.
smoothly. Yeah.
Yes.
I bet that's a headache.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
You prefer being a director or a producer?
Well, I don't know. I used to think that I wanted to produce more. But no, I don't know. I feel like I like both things equally. I don't know. I'm more like an organized person. I like organizing things. So maybe I'm leaning more toward producing in that sense.
Is there
because I haven't really directed as much before.
Is there any other roles that you have played in like the whole movie making process?
Yeah, I've basically done a little bit of everything. I've even like been the cinematographer for like a small short before.
Yeah.
I've assistant directed. I've script supervised. I really like doing that because it's kind of like checking for a little fly. Yeah. It's just script supervising is basically checking for like continuity in every scene and every shot. Yeah. And I think I like paying attention to details, so I like enjoy doing that a lot. Yeah.
Cool. So I know that, or at least I actually I don't know, but do you think the community, like for Latin artists, especially those who are like in the film industry, is that like super low, or is there like a lot of people doing it? Because I don't know any besides you two right now.
Yeah. So you mean like here in Arkansas?
Yeah, here in Arkansas. And has that been a struggle for you guys, or no?
I mean, I guess it's not, I guess, a very popular, or maybe like we don't see a lot of Hispanics doing, you know, all these kinds of things. There's a couple of people from our program that, you know, have been out there, but I don't know if they are still doing it. So I guess there's not a big number, you know, now that you mention it, and I'm like trying to think. But I feel like there should be, right? Because there's a lot of stories to tell from here. I'm not even from Arkansas.
Yeah. Well, I am. I can tell you that there's not there's not a lot of people, you know, that have like the same goals or aspirations, or even like in this industry, you know, like I think as like a quince photographer, I think there's like maybe three other people doing like quinces and weddings in the Latin community, and it's just, you know, we're a community that's so rich in like partying. You know, we celebrate every other thing. Yes. You know, just this past weekend we had a bautizo, and we threw a party for a bautizo. Yep. So that's how it is. Yeah. So it's for me, I don't think it's been a struggle, but it's been more like this fly won't go away. Like a blessing, because I'm like one of the only people that is in the industry. I guess so, yeah. But then again, I also get criticized with like, oh, you have a really easy job. All you do is, you know, point a camera and shoot. And I feel like that's a lot of like Latin American like the mindset, culture, the mindset. They're like, if you don't get your hands dirty, if you don't go out there and like, you know, bust your ass for 12 hours, it's really not work. Has that ever happened to you, like criticism from other people for like what you're doing or like what you're pursuing? Not really, no? You know, like all my family back home and here is just very supportive toward what I'm doing. And they're like, oh, you know, I wish that I would have, maybe not, you know, but, you know, like my children or this person would have, you know, done something as creative or like would have dared to do what you do. Yeah. So I personally haven't, but, you know, I guess you have, which is very, very I guess different. When you were a kid, did you ever see yourself, you know, going into this field? Not really. No? I didn't even know what I wanted to be when I was little, you know. I was always like super doubtful. Kind of just going with the flow. Yeah. That's pretty basically. Cool. Yeah. How do your parents feel about this whole journey that you're taking about, you know, pursuing the art, the film industry? I guess, you know, they're excited. Yeah. I don't think they like fully understand
what I'm doing, but they're always like, you know, if I tell them like, oh, I'm shooting this weekend, they're like, oh, good luck.
Yeah.
You know, my mom's like, oh, blessings. I hope, you know, everything turns out well.
Yeah.
So they're very supportive, but they don't like really understand, right? Because they've never had that experience themselves.
Yeah.
Like my mom's a lawyer. My dad's like an economist, and he also teaches at the university back home.
Yeah.
So it's just like super, super different.
I feel like parents always fear when their children pursue the arts, because there's always this stereotype like, you know, there's no money in the arts. It's like, why are you pursuing that? And I feel like a lot of Latino parents are like that.
Yeah.
So if they're really like supportive of you, that's really awesome.
Yeah.
For you to do that. When I was growing up, or when I was like pursuing this, you know, there was a lot of doubt, and I knew it was in the back of my parents' head. But I'm glad to say that, you know, I'm at the point where I'm at today.
You're here.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
That's
doing
great.
A podcast with you two beautiful people, and we'll get you soon on the podcast. So he had mentioned to me that you guys met like doing a remind me again what
our first film. Yeah,
first
it's
film.
called Maria's Journal.
Okay.
Yes. So it was our capstone project when we were in undergrad in UCA. Capstone, it means like your final project, like your thesis project as an undergraduate student, basically. And we were in the same class. And he, you know, the way it works, it's kind of like everybody writes a script. Then we vote on the 5 scripts that we're going to do in the class. And then everybody else that doesn't get their script chosen to direct has to be a crew member, like a cinematographer, a producer, a production designer. Like that's kind of how it worked. And like my script got chosen in the class, and his didn't. So he was like, I guess I'll produce your movie.
So you got the bragging rights.
I guess.
Yeah.
But he also, you know, like he made the script that he pitched to the class and he wrote for the class. We made it right after we graduated.
Yeah.
So it still got made. It's and it actually, and he can tell you a little bit more about it, but it actually got in a festival in Puerto Rico, and he's going to Puerto Rico in the next couple of weeks. So you know, we both got kind of like, and I produced that one, so we kind of like switch roles back and forth.
Yeah. Since you you know, you're almost at the end of your journey with school and this project, you know, I feel like the art scene, the creative scene, or even like the movie making scene has become more mainstream nowadays. What would be a good piece of advice for like the younger generation? Because I know as an artist, there's a lot of like hardships during the whole process that, you know, sometimes want to make you like, dang, is this even worth it?
Yeah.
Did you ever feel like that? And if you did, like, what would be a good piece of advice to those upcoming filmmakers, artists, what have you?
I guess, you know, it's I still kind of feel like that sometimes, you know, it's like, oh, is this even going to be good?
Yeah.
Like, am I even doing my best? Are people going to like this story? Am I a good director? You know, there's always all this kind of doubts that just come into play when you're creating something and when you're an artist, right? Being a perfectionist also doesn't help that much. But I would say, you know, just it's so easy nowadays to just start doing these things because we have, you know, our phones have cameras.
Yeah.
And even though, you know, they're not, you know, the best.
Yeah.
They're still pretty good.
You got to start somewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can just, you know, go out there, write your own little story and just go out there and do it with your friends or your family or whoever, right?
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people put excuses to not start, you know, we kind of, we're blessed to be at where we're at today, but we always made it work. You know, we started with like a Canon Rebel and like these little mics that you hook up to the camera, and they're not the best, but you know, it's starting is the main key. And I feel like a lot of people are afraid to start. Yeah. Just because they're afraid of the criticism.
They don't want to fail.
Their own self-doubt. But you know, and it's now that you mention it, you know, a lot of people are afraid of failure, but a lot of the people who, you know, make it and are successful, you know, they've been through so many failures.
For sure.
even myself, like I've had to fail multiple times. Or, maybe even you, like when writing, you're like, man, this doesn't make any sense. I'm just going to start over. Yeah. So it's a process that is very, it's very destructive for yourself because you like feel like your work is never good enough. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So
even when it's done and even when you get that praise, right? I feel like you're worst critic.
Yeah. Once you accomplish that, you're like, damn, what's next? Like, where do I move on from now? How can I
raise that bar?
How can I make it better? So yeah, I'm excited to see your film. When do you think it'll be released, or is it going to be till May, or when?
Yeah, it'll probably be until next spring.
Okay.
Because we have a showcase of all the grad student films.
Okay.
And right now there's like 4 or 5 that are being produced right now.
Yeah.
As we speak, I think.
Okay. Nice.
So, around March or April. It'll be when we'll have a free screening at UCA that, people can come to if they want.
Heck yeah. Let's see. What else can we talk about? I think we hit all the topics that I was interested in, knowing about you and your film. Is there anything that you would like to share with, your viewers? Like take this as a moment to like say what you feel about your film and what you expect your viewers to feel as well.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let me think a little bit.
Yeah. And I think, kind of like when I take a photo, the caption that I put, when I started doing photography, I started in the military doing photos, and every photo we take, we're obligated to write a caption with it. So I think that's why I became really good at writing captions. But, fast forward to today, I feel like a caption is super necessary because not a lot of people are able to understand what you're trying to show with your photos. And in this case, with your film. And I feel like nowadays, we live in a world where everybody watches a movie, but at the same time, they're on their phones. They're not really paying attention to the film, which kind of makes me mad a little bit. I'm like, hey, can you get off your phone and appreciate this film for a little bit? Because you're going to miss this part. And if you don't see this part, you're not going to understand the next part. So what are the emotions that you're trying to get out of your viewers?
Yeah, I think this movie is kind of like a love letter to me. I mean, not to me, from me to like my friends here that have grown up here, like not only Hispanic immigrants, but just like immigrants in general, right? And I feel like I'm just trying to like generate these conversations within the families of, how they can bridge these generational gaps that exist, not only because of, the generation, but like the cultural translation and like the embracing of traditions and like identity, how to like find yourself in this, in another country that's not, your family's country. It's, but it's kind of like you're making it your own. You were born here. I don't know. There's a lot of like different conversations that I hope that are generated after people watch this movie, a better understanding of like both perspectives, and then like the median person that's kind of like trying for this familial conflict, I guess, to work out.
Okay. That's pretty awesome. So I'm assuming, since you say it's very dialogue heavy than your film, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And you came up with all the dialogue, or do you have help? Or
I mean, I wrote everything myself, but there's always like proofreading, and then when we're in the moment with our actors, sometimes there's like room for improvisation. Sometimes they bring something to the character, or like a line of dialogue, or like a personalize a line in there that feels more like themselves and helps them connect with the character.
Okay, that's pretty awesome. Well, I think we're coming close to the wrapping point of this thing. My last question to you is there any film, that you're interested in, like in the future this year that's coming out?
Like that I want to watch?
Yeah.
Oh anything my God.
Off the top of your head.
What do I want to watch? I guess.
I think that just came out, didn't it?
It did.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what movies are out there right now.
I don't know.
What movies are coming out?
The Avatar's coming out. I'm really intrigued to see this movie called Smile. I don't know if you've seen the previews for it.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why. I'm like a really big horror fan.
Gotcha.
I just like I don't scare easily, so I'm like always looking for a challenge. I'm like, I want to see if this movie's actually going to scare me. Yeah. So
that's funny.
I'm still wanting to watch it. I might go watch it tonight. I don't know. But that's one, and also the Black Panther one. Just because they're incorporating all of this, like Mexican actors, a lot of Mexican traditions.
For sure.
So I'm excited for see what they do with the culture of it. But yeah.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't thought about that. I guess I do want to watch that one. And also, I just thought of one, Babylon from Damien Chazelle. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one seems pretty interesting.
Is that one out already, or is it coming out?
I thought it was. Right, it's coming out.
It's coming out, right?
Yeah.
All right, well.
I love that director, so.
Yeah, who's directing it?
It's Damien Chazelle,
oh, yeah,
the director of La La Land and Whiplash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet. All right, well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we'll look forward to Daniel.
Yes.
Next time. All right.
Thank you.